Due to very popular demand, I'm making a part 2 to my view model video. This video is going to be dedicated to how to make a firing gun using the view model. Like that actually works, it deals damage and whatnot. And yeah, without further ado, I won't waste any more of your time. Let's get started. Obviously, to begin, you're going to need the view model from my previous video. I'll put a link to the video in the description, and I'll put a card up on screen in the top right. Just watch that video and then come back once you're done and you have a completed view model that works. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to find the local script for the M4A1 that I made in the previous video. How this tutorial is going to work is basically I'm going to preface what I'm going to do before I actually do it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to code the things off screen, and then I'm going to come back when I'm finished coding it, and I'm going to explain it to you, do whatever needs to be done. Just explain how the code works and what it does. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get when the mouse button 1 or left click of the player is held. And that's what we do with this scripting right here. So basically what we do originally is we get the player's mouse, we set it to the variable mouse. Then we initialize a local variable named held, and we set it to false originally because the player isn't holding down their mouse button immediately. And what we do is when the mouse button goes down, so like when they click their mouse, hold it down, held will be turned true, and then when they let go of their mouse, then it will be held equals false. Simple enough, right? The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create the backbone of when the player's like using the weapon. And this is what we do here. So basically, I know while true do is not really it's pretty much frowned upon to use just a while true loop because that can create lag, it can create like unstable server conditions. But I personally think this is the best way to keep the weapon active. So it's basically just while the server is running, while the player is connected, repeat wait until player.character find first child M4A1. Change M4A1 to whatever view model tool thing that you have, like whatever the tool's name is, just change it to that. I have it as M4A1, and if you just downloaded the view model pack and just inserted it, it would be M4A1. So you don't really need to change that if you have my specific view model. And then what we're gonna do is if held, then while held is true basically. What we're gonna do is it will do anything in this if statement, and we're gonna code the if statement right now. So this is the first part of the if statement, and this is where the fun really begins. Basically what we do is when if, then we get the mouse target, which is basically where the mouse is at when the mouse is hit. So like basically we just get the mouse position, and then what we do is we create a new raycast. But it's not really a raycast. As you can see down here, it's actually a shape cast. It's a spear cast. I'll get to that in a second. But basically, this is just raycast params. So basically, it's just like the limits of the raycast and other things. This right here, it basically just prevents the character from being in the raycast. And then this is just a blacklist filter type. It's actually deprecated, but I just use this because it's simple. And then what we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to get the start position of the raycast. What I usually do is I just make the bullet come out of the player's camera. So if you didn't know, there's two types of FPS games where the bullet comes from. Either the bullet comes from the barrel of the gun, or it comes from the player's camera, which is basically their head. There's many different ways you could do it. Usually people who are using projectile shooting, which we are not doing here, we're doing hit scan because hit scan is easier and it creates way less lag. But basically, if you're doing projectile shooting, it usually comes out of the barrel of the gun. But if you're using hit scan, it doesn't really matter where it comes from. So we just use camera C-frame because if you want to make more guns than just the singular one, then it will be helpful to just have this be a constant throughout. Then we have the range of the raycast. This will be how far the bullet travels. 500. Obviously you can customize this to whatever. This is basically just the direction at which the raycast goes out, which is basically like in front of the player. And then finally, this is the size of the raycast. This is the size of the bullet that we're sending out. This is basically the hitbox size. Since we're using a spear cast, we can actually change the bullet size. But if you're using a raycast, which I have commented out here, you can't use this size variable. You can't change that at all. What you do is you just do range. Like, you only have the range, the starting position, the aim direction, and then obviously the raycast params. But if you were doing a raycast, it would be start position, and then I think it would be aim direction times range, which is what you would do for a raycast. I use spherecast because you can customize the bullet's hitbox, and it allows for more balancing possibilities in a game, which is what I'm doing for Project Swift, which is my own first-person shooter game, which takes inspiration from Titanfall. But yeah, that's basically the raycasting bit done. Now what we need to do is we need to get if the raycast hits something. One more thing before we go forward, we actually need to create a remote event. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna just create a remote event in the gun itself, just to keep everything like right there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a remote event right here. And let's just rename it to bullet connection. Just because, you know, this is gonna be the remote event we fire when a bullet hits something. And let's define the remote event all the way up here. So let's just do local remote equals script.parent.bullet connection. And now we have a ray result. So basically, I left a couple comments in here if you want to read them. If you want to copy them down as well, that would help you probably. But basically, this is just if the ray hits something, it will get the part that it hit, it will get the position of the part that it hit, and it will get the distance between the shot. It will get the distance of our shot. This is helpful for when you're wanting to do balancing, like damage balancing, like damage fall off or whatever. And yeah, this is also helpful for if you just want to create a part that goes the distance of where the part like that you hit is. But we don't really need to do that because I'm gonna show you how to do a tracer. Or no, I'm actually not gonna show you how to do a tracer. If you would like me to show you how to do a bullet tracer after I'm done with this video, then feel free to comment it. I'm taking this tutorial in one take, man. I can't be bothered. But yeah, if we get a hit part, then we do a remote fire, or a fire server, which will be a part of the script, a server script that we put underneath this tool. But before we do anything with that, let's first finish up the local script. Another thing we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to get a sound. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, underneath the handle of our part, I'm going to add a sound. And in that sound, I'm going to get an ID that I already have from my Project Swift game. You can find your own ID for the bullet sound. I'm just going to use this one. But what we're going to do is we're going to do local sound equals script.parent.handle.sound. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to do sound play. And then that's gonna be, we just play a gunshot sound. And finally, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna wait, and then 0.1 is what I have the fire rate to be. This is the amount of time you want between bullets being fired. I have 0.1 because I think 10 rounds per second is good enough. But yeah, that's basically it for the local script. Now let's head to the server script. First thing you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to actually add a server script underneath the part, and then you're going to need to define a couple of things. So in the server script, what we do is we define the remote event, and then once we get a server event from the remote event, we're going to check if the hit part actually exists. We're going to fire, since we fired the remote event with hit part and player always gets fired from a client to server event, we're going to get the player and the hit part, and we're going to use the hit part param to see if it actually exists or not, or if it was a false fire. This is basically just to prevent any unnecessary bugs. Because I've had a couple of bugs with Project Swift that were kind of just stupid and shouldn't have existed, and this fixed it. But yeah, let's get to the actual damaging part of the gun. So this part of the script may look very complicated, but it's not really that complicated. It's a bunch of just ors to basically make sure that damage actually occurs. So basically what we have is if hitPart.parent find first child humanoid, or if hitPart.parent.parent find first child humanoid. Basically, this just makes sure the hit part is actually a human. And if it is a human, or a player rather, then it will get the humanoid of it, which is just basically a rehashing of this if statement right here to be a variable. And then it will be if hitPart.name equal head, or if hitPart.name or .parent.name equal hair, then it will deal an extra amount of damage because you just hit a headshot. And headshots are usually critical damage in, you know, most FPS games. Else, it will just deal 30 damage to the player. Basically, this is just like if it hits the head, it will deal more damage. Obviously, if you don't want a headshot multiplier, then you can literally just have this, just have a humanoid take damage 30. And these number variables are very much customizable. This is just basically the damage that you deal to the other player when you hit them. Basically, if you hit them in the body, then they take 30 damage. If you hit them in the head, they take 60. The max player damage or player health, unless if you have a custom script already to up the player's health, is 100. So anything above 100 will be a one-tap weapon. And that's basically it for the functionality of it. If I go into avatar, just create a break builder, lock avatar, sure. And I go through and shoot it a little bit with the weapon, you'll see that it kills them. They die. Yippee, it works. The sound actually is kind of screwed up right now because I assigned it to be the handle, so it's just completely in your right ear. If you want it to be just like all around, you can just make it parent to the character. But we're not done, because obviously just having the weapon like fire invisible bullets without any like sort of indicator that it's firing, apart from the sound, is kind of dumb. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a muzzle flash. And how we're gonna do this is we're actually gonna pull the view model out of replicated storage for a second to work on it. Basically, this is our view model, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna add an invisible part to the barrel of the gun. So give me a second while I rescale this. And yeah, now we have a part in the muzzle of the gun. Basically, I just created this, put it in there, in the muzzle. I'm gonna rename it to Flash, just so we, you know, keep track of it. Rename it to Flash. I'm gonna make sure that it can't collide with anything, but it is anchored. And then I'm gonna move it into the view model. And what that does is it just, you know, we have a part in the muzzle flash. Perfect. What we are then gonna do is we're gonna actually add a particle emitter into the muzzle, or into the flash part. You can customize this to literally however you want. The only things I recommend you do, like 100%, is make sure the lifetime is 0.1, so it exists for 1/10 of a second. And the rate is 0, so it doesn't just automatically happen. It only happens when we click on, you know, like we use the weapon. I would also set light emission to 1, but other than that, you can literally do whatever you want. I use this yellow color for the flash just because, you know, I like it. I think it looks the most like an actual gun flash. But yeah, that's it for the view model part, so we can move that back into replicated storage. Now all we really need to do is we need to go into the local script and basically just emit the particle emitter. And that's just basically what we do here. We just redefine view model to make sure it's defined, and then we emit the flash. Now that we actually have the flash, I'm actually just gonna move the sound from the handle to the flash, and I'm just gonna do sound equals view model dot flash dot sound, and that will basically just make it play in the right ear constantly, not just like weirdly swap it. Yeah, now that we have it, we actually have a flash now. I forgot to change the size of it, actually. That's my bad. But yeah, you can see it still works. It kills the guy. And I forgot to change the size of the flash. Give me a second. I forgot to change the size to 0.25, along with a couple of other things. Like, locked apart. You make sure that it's locked to the part. It doesn't, like, move at all. And yeah, now let's retry it, and it should work. I have my gun. As you can see, it's right there. It's just like at the barrel of the gun, and then it still shoots and it still kills. That's it. That's the entire gun. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new here and you like the content, then make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.